and they pulled us over a couple times on a mule deer hunt because we were on a gravel road where we shouldn't have been after dark. And man, we were coming down the road, and all of a sudden this old truck backed out on the road and stopped us. And he turned out his lights and jumped out of the truck and walked up to him. Then he came back to the truck, went in the back of the cooler and brought some beer up to him. And, and that was the cartel that we had run into. And we were hunting coyotes right in their backyard, but he was friendly to them. And
how long, I'm trying to think, because we've been in the TV business for 18 years and you were in it before us. How did you get your start in the industry?
Well, back in the day, I was a writer for Bowhunter magazine and North American Whitetail and some of the other magazines that went right after I got out of college.
Hey, you're supposed to say deer and deer hunting there. Come on.
I don't think they would publish. I tried to get them to publish some of my articles back then, but they thought I was too young and stupid. They're the only magazine that realized I was too young and stupid. So, I mean.
Dan said you did something for us because he remembered we were having this conversation.
I think I wrote some comedy articles, one pagers, and I think maybe your magazine picked some of them up. But
okay.
I wasn't in that business too long. I as an outdoor writer, I came to terms with the kind of money I was going to make, and so I loved the outdoors and I wanted to stay in the outdoor industry, but I found that writing wasn't the direction I was going to want to go because I wrote a book, and Relentless Pursuit was the name of the book, and it was a whitetail hunting book. And I went to a show, and I think I was at like the Iowa Deer Classic somewhere or something, but there I was sitting at the table signing these books, and about every 30 minutes I might sell a book. But I looked over and there was this fella sitting over there, and he had a line of about, I don't know, must have been 30, 40 people, and they were handing him $20 bills as fast as they could, and he was giving them videos. So this guy, Noel Feather, was really kicking butt, and I was over here watching him, and I was saying, what's in these videos? So I got to watching his video on the table there, and yeah, it was cool. Him and, I can't remember his name, but anyway, they were hunting whitetails, and so I said, I think I can do that. So I bought a Super VHS camera. I think it cost me at the time $350 was a lot. And I got to work, and about 8 months later, I produced a little bit of some video, and it went over well with my friends and stuff. And so then I bought a better camera and started shooting video. And then a year later, I produced Lethal Flight. That was the first video I ever produced. And of all places, the Come and Go gas stations picked that video up. And today, I believe it was sold more videos, 560,000 videos, than any video that's ever been produced in the hunting industry, including Bill Jordan's Monster Bucks.
Wow. That's amazing.
But the only difference between Bill Jordan's video and my videos were selling for $1.99 at Come and Go, and he was getting $19.99 out of his. So I didn't do quite as well as him. And matter of fact, I think I only made about 40 cents a piece because I got shingle-cocked on the deal. And as a young guy, I didn't know about contracts and all that stuff other than just give them a master tape and they were going to send me royalty checks. But here I am today, old and finally got some knowledge. Now I just need to try and sell something.
Well, your social media following's huge because we're a big nut on that side, and you're bigger than us. Your YouTube channel is just absolutely huge, and it's interesting as things have changed, right? I mean, they've really progressed because, we've seen it all. I've been in the industry since '93, and back then print was the rage, right? When you were trying to be an outdoor writer, and that is probably the worst career anybody can get into because there's not a lot of money there, and it's not steady, right? I mean, you don't have that steady income coming in. So, when we
you're right, man. Back in the day, that was the glory. If you could get a article published, you were somebody in the outdoor industry, and in my lifetime, I've had some crazy things that have happened to me that just happened to, it was too phenomenal to just be chance. And one of those was a 214-inch deer that I shot on the home farm in Illinois. I called him Crooked Hoof because he had a crooked foot, and you could see his tracks distinctly in the mud wherever you found him. Not only that, but he was like a 260-pound animal. But I killed that deer, and that deer, North American Whitetail and Buckmaster Magazine argued back and forth over who was getting the cover art for that buck, because my dad had taken a photo that turned out just amazing, showing the beauty of that deer, and with me holding it, and it ended up on Buckmaster Magazine. But I'll never forget walking into a local gas station, and there was my photo on the cover of Buckmaster Magazine on the shelf. That was a pivotal time in my life. And, I'll never forget that. You're right. At that time, it was better than anything. But
Yeah.
since then, a lot greater and bigger things, fortunately, have happened in my life, including, my children and other great things that have come along. But that was definitely a good time for me.
How big, when did you get into TV? Because I know you were into it before we were. When did you start doing your own TV show?
It was close to 30 years ago. It was about the time that the Outdoor Channel began. And prior to that, I was putting my stuff on Fox Television. But as soon as the Outdoor Channel opened, a guy worked for them named Wade Sherman, and he called me actually, asking if I would air a TV show with him. And I haven't looked back. I've been doing it ever since.
It's amazing. How has that industry changed? I mean, what have you seen in those 30 years on the TV side?
Well, every kid now with a camera has 4K capability, and they can edit in their bedroom when they get done hunting. They can sit there and whip out a video or a reel for Instagram or Facebook. And some of the videos that I watch on YouTube that kids are doing or young people are doing are outstanding. But the phenomenon about the situation is there are so many of them, and they're all competing with each other, that the old guys like me and the Drurys and you guys and some of the, Bill Jordan and these other leaders, remain the leader in the industry. And I think it's just because we were here first. It's like anything. Who's the first guy with a slip cam broadhead? Rage is first. They'll always be first, and we were the first. And I think I just was able to capitalize on my instinctive shooting, and people like to laugh at me. Sometimes I'm not trying to make them laugh at me, but they laugh at me. So, you take it for whatever it's worth.
That's because you show on your shows, you show the good and the bad, right? I mean, a lot of,
Yeah.
you've been in the industry. A lot of celebrities don't want to show you everything that goes wrong, right? I mean, you show it,
Yeah.
and we do too. I mean, that's why people like us, because we're real. Heck, I missed 2 turkeys in my bow this spring, and we'll be showing it. One I hit a branch, and one the arrow rest didn't drop.
Man, that's bad, buddy. That's bad.
I know. I'm telling you. And next day I got revenge, though. A few days later, I used the shotgun, so I got my revenge on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I missed a lot of turkeys, and they just won't hold still. If they would hold still, they would be better movie stars, but sometimes they just won't keep that head still,
Yeah. What advice you have for somebody that's new that wants to get into the industry? Just curious. I mean, like, you got that 18, 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid. What should he do to try to get in the industry?
I think any good advice I could give to anybody right now, whether they're young or old, if you want to get into the industry, don't get into the industry if you're driven by money. If you're driven by money, then you need to go find a job, or you need to start your own business, maybe something that you sell in the hunting industry. But if you think that you're going to jump into the TV business, or create a YouTube channel that's going to make you money, and you're comparing yourself to the Slock Master or someone else that you're watching, it's probably a very risky venture for you. No matter how good or how funny or how much charisma you may have, in the end, the industry has changed and the money's diluted. And fortunately for me and the older icons that, are my peers are the ones making all the money, and the young guys, it's a struggle because there's a million of them out there shooting arrows at deer and hunting ducks and calling in turkeys that are amazing sportsmen and really good at it and good on camera, but they just can't figure out how to make the money. And that's because sometimes it's just not possible for them.
Yeah, the money situations change, right? I always tell people, because a lot of, you do some seminars or whatever, and people ask, and I always said, well, everybody thinks they're going to be the next Michael Waddell, right? Well, that opportunity, he hit it at the right time. It was there at the right time. That time's gone right now, right?
Right.
It's almost impossible to get that.
Yeah. My daughter, she's 26 years old, and she just, she's been employed now for a while through Barstool Sports. And Barstool Sports opened an outdoor division a while back, and they needed personality to run that platform, and that is a huge platform that is bigger than all of us combined. The Barstool Sport platform,
yep.
Millions and millions. And Dave, the owner of it, I think he just sold it for 600 million or something crazy number like that. Half what I would have got for my business, or double. Sorry, but anyway, the point is, there were 1,500 applicants that tried to get that job that Sydney got.
Wow.
And, that just shows you how many people are driven to be in the outdoor industry and who, long to be a celebrity, or, whatever it might be. Now, if you're looking to become a celebrity or be famous, then, you might obtain that, but that doesn't mean you'll get money with it. And so you still got to pay your bills.
Yeah.
And, I'm just fortunate to be where I am, and I've had a good run at it. And I've got the greatest sponsors in the world, but they're happy, when Bass Pro sees that I post a video and it gathers 1 million views, and that I mention, or I wear their hat or whatever it is, that helps them make a lot of money.
Yep.
And my sponsors, all of them are real. And my whole life, I've never crossed the line. I won't pick up a product and lie to my fans. If I have to do that, it's like, I'm not going to go there. And I took on some sponsors in the industry as I started, and come to realize that they weren't real, and they were using fabricated numbers and stuff to gather, income. And, I parted ways with those people, and I live by that. And I think in the end that might be what paid off, because if you see me shooting a morel target, or you see me, pulling back an Oneida bow, or pulling out a Grim Reaper out of an animal and saying, this is the best dang broadhead, or this is the best bow I've ever shot, I'm not lying to you, because I won't say that unless it's real.
Well, and it makes a difference, right? When you believe in the product, it's easy to spiel and talk about it. And when you're using something that's not really good, it's hard to bring anything that's positive.
It's hard to
about
sell
it.
it.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell it.
Yeah, we do the same thing. I don't, on our TV shows, we don't try to sell any kind of sponsorship unless I believe in the product itself, because I just don't need to be hawking somebody's stuff that I don't believe in.
I do say Fords are tough, though, and mine's in the garage right now, so I'm really reconsidering that situation.
I'm a Ford guy too, so I can't say anything.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Mossberg. Mossberg has been supplying American hunters with quality firearms for over 100 years. Over the years, they've upheld their commitment to innovation by creating a handful of firearms that have shaped the way we hunt today. For more information, visit mossberg.com.
So I'm going to ask you about your most memorable hunt, but the one I think that always comes to mind, and you use it at the start of that show, when you shoot that grizzly bear, I mean, most guys had to be just freaking out in that same situation, right? You're in the middle, wide open. He pops up on his legs, and you're just like, and you just drill him in the eye, and he drops right there. Just amazing. So I always wanted to ask you, and I never did. What were you aiming for there?
Well, I'm an instinctive shooter.
I knew that.
If you're a pure instinctive shooter, they don't aim.
Yeah.
The arrow goes where you're looking. And earlier in our conversation, I told you that there was a lot of things in my lifetime that happened to me by chance or by, amazing turn of events.
Yeah.
And I believe that was one of the pivotal points in my career. And, when I started, I wasn't driven by money. I was driven by fame. I wanted to be a famous bow hunter. I mean, I was 20 years old and I thought I wanted to be a movie star, or I wanted to be the great bow hunter,
Yeah.
I like the icons that I followed, that I thought were amazing. And today, sometimes I still reach out to some of those guys that I looked up to. And, but anyway, I'll never forget it. And, it may not be the reason why it happened, but I told God, I said, God, I just want the people in my core area, my hometown, and my little area around Peoria, Illinois, just a little rate. I just want them to know who I am, of all the work I'm doing in bow hunting, that know that, that I'm the real deal. And, I'll never forget in high school and in junior high and stuff, when I bring pictures to school, or I remember my first big buck, man. I killed him with my bow and I brought the picture to school, and sure enough, another kid said, yeah, Tim, he spread the rumor that I'd shot it with a rifle. And, that crushed me, because I thought about how hard that accomplishment, and it crushed me to hear that that's the story that took off,
Yeah.
And it was that day that I was like, man, if I could only prove that these animals that I'm hunting and this really happened, I get to the point I didn't want to tell people. They think I'm a liar. And then I found that the camera was the best way to show the naysayers. And to this day, I still use the camera to the naysayers. I heard Joe Rogan say that spear hunters, and he was talking about me because I'm about the only guy airing video, he said we're assholes. He said, because it's an inhumane sport. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. The spear is the most ethical weapon, tool of hunting you could ever use. For one, if you care about the animals and you want them to get away, I got to be so dang close to kill an animal with a spear you can smell his breath.
Yeah.
And if you want the animal to die, I never lose animals with a spear. I've lost animals with my guns. I've lost animals with my bow, but I have never lost an animal with my spear that I've hit with the point of the spear and it went inside their body, because a spear is lethal. And when that spear goes in and they take off running, it opens a huge channel that they cannot recover from. And I speared a couple animals that caught the peripheral vision. They caught it coming and got out of the way, but it hit them in the butt. And I hit one in the neck one time. I hit an axis deer high in the shoulders, into the neck. They're dead in 100 yards. They just can't take it. And if you hit them in the guts, where you'd cry if you hit them with your bow, they don't hardly make it out of sight, because when they take off running, you've got a 6 foot to 8 foot long thing up there with razors on the bottom that's hitting trees and banging off stuff, and it just disembowels them. So my point is, these things happen. And when I drew back on that deer, that bear, I just think that I was running down the hill trying to beat the wind. He was going to walk into my wind, and I was running to get ahead of that bear. And when I finally got down to the point where he was about to hit my wind, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting close. And so I stopped at the moment he smelled me. And when he smelled me, he went, whoo, and he turned and looked right at me. Well, as an instinctive hunter, I about peed my pants, for one, when he turned and woofed at me and looked at me. Yeah. And my guide was up there holding the camera. He wasn't holding his rifle. It was like me and the bow. And when I drew back, I let her rip. And when I let her rip, at that point in my career, I could shoot a gnat's ass at 30 yards. I could hit anything with that bow instinctively. That bow was a killer. But at that moment, that arrow just took off. And I looked at myself, or thought to myself, I even thought it before it hit him. I was like, oh crap, I was looking in his eyes. And sure enough, that arrow went right where I was looking instinctively and zapped him right between the eyes. It sheared off both blades of that broadhead, and the shaft punctured the skull, went through his brain right down, and ended up 3 columns in his vertebrae right down the center of his neck. And when he hit the ground, it was just like the video. He didn't even wiggle. He didn't give one hind leg kick or nothing. And I'm telling you right now, the only way that could have happened if there was some kind of divine
intervention, yeah,
involved in sailing that arrow. Someone rode that arrow to that bear, and it wasn't just because it came out of my hands.
Yeah.
And to this day, when I shoot a bird flying or a duck crossing the cornfield, or I shoot an elk at a great distance or whatever it is, or knock a prairie dog off his hole at 120 yards, I just sit back and wonder at that flight of that arrow and the beauty of it. And, just how is this all happening? And I'm still old, but I'm still shooting pretty good. And it's just, those things happen for a reason to some people, I guess. And that's the only good thing I'm good at in life. So I'll take it.
Did you grow up as a recurve hunter then? Is that how you learned to shoot instinctive? Or
Yeah. I shot my first deer when I was 9 years old with a recurve, and there wasn't many deer back then. It was actually a longbow, an old fiberglass bear longbow, and I shot him in a bean field. It was a button buck. He come walking up on me, and oh my gosh, I can feel my heart beating right now just thinking about it. And when he walked up about at the time, it seemed like a long shot, but I think he was about 18 yards. And I shot that old wooden arrow with that broadhead that my grandpa had made out of a tin roof, and it wasn't sharp at all. And it hit that deer right in the center of his belly. And he ran over the hill, and I ran back to the house and got my dad. And he had the foresight to say, hey, we better not look till tomorrow because there wasn't much blood. But the next morning, he let me skip school. He got me out of bed. I never slept all night. I couldn't wait to find this deer, hoping I could, and he gave me his 30-06 of all things. I think that's past the limitations now, but he gave me the 30-06, and, that's what he was good at hunting deer with, and he said, if you see him now, he was thinking it's still alive because bow hunting was kind of foreign to him as well, but I'll never forget it, man. I'm walking up the creek just below the house, and where Dad and Grandpa had told me to look, there's thick stuff down there. Dad went to school. He was a college or a teacher, a principal at his school, and Grandpa had to go to the coal mine. So I was alone, and I went up through there carrying that 06 and walking. I didn't go 80 yards, so I hit the first little thicket where the deer had went down into, and there was that deer laying beside the creek. And I'll never forget, that arrow was still sticking straight out of its stomach, and there was little bubbles coming out. It was bloated at that point, there was little bubbles coming out of the arrow hole right beside the arrow. It was just coming out real slow. Oh my gosh, I was so thrilled. And when I walked up to that deer, I just poured over that deer and looked at it, and I drug it the best I could, probably 100 yards up to this edge of the gravel road, and there was a fence line along there. Well, I could see the house but it was a steep hill up to the house, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to carry that deer. I was probably only about 60 pounds myself. Jeez. And so what I did, I was so frantic that I killed a deer. I couldn't believe it. So I put it up against the fence, and then I buried it with grass and everything else, so nothing would find it, and then I went back to the house, and Mom called Dad, and he came. He quit work and came home, and it was a big deal.
And back then it was a big deal, right? Because
it was a big deal because you never seen any deer, and when you got one, it was a thrill. I mean, everybody come to see the deer and see what it looked like. And, we all celebrated, and we'd all have a big dinner where we had deer meat that night. It was phenomenal time in my life.
Yeah, it's interesting because your first deer, you always remember it. Mine was with 4 year-and-a-half-old bucks came in, like a spike, a 4-pointer, 6, and I ate So I shot the big one, right? I shot the basket 8, and just the same as you. I hit him too far back. I probably liver shot him, and we didn't get a lot of blood that night. My dad had to go back to work. It was on Sunday night, so he had to go to work the next day. He called 2 of the farmers that were neighbors. Well, I woke up at first light. I'm finding that deer, right? So I'm down there. I already found him. I field dressed him. I'm dragging him out, and they come down and they're like, "Oh my God, you actually killed it!" You know what I mean? They're just in utter shock that I'd killed a deer with a bow, and I'm a 12-year-old boy, and nobody in the area had shot it. It was spread the news spread like wildfire in the bars, and it was just a different world back then. So
yeah.
So what is your favorite hunt overall? I mean, if you had one that, and I know you've killed some amazing things and amazing shots, but one hunt, what was your favorite hunt of all time?
I can't beat the feeling I get when I call coyotes in and kill them with my bow. And, I travel to places where it's really good. And
we lost the sound.
Yeah. Just let them know.
Tim, I lost your sound.
There.
Oh, there you
back.
Now you're back.
Okay, so I was saying I travel for coyote hunting with the bow. Last year I went to Mexico. I went back this year, and I like to go to private ranches or wherever I can where there's a lot of coyotes where they haven't heard the rifle hunters calling to them yet.
Yeah.
And man, there's just the thrill of setting up a call. I use a Fox Pro. Sometimes I use my mouth call, but to trick a coyote and kill him with a bow, where you're not just sitting in a tree stand hunting a deer and killing one, but you actually coaxed him in within bow range, shot him on the run. That thrills me to no end still to this day. And that's why I get a rush out of predator hunting and doing it with a bow.
Yeah, and we struggle shooting them with a rifle. We're using an AR, a thermal, and the silencer on it. You know what I mean?
Hey, that's why I emphasize I go places where they haven't been called, because I tell you, I used to shoot a lot of them right here in Illinois in my backyard. I'd go call coyotes, and I'd kill a dozen a year with my bow. But I tell you what, if I put the same amount of effort into doing it that I used to, I'd be lucky to kill 2 or 3 a year. It's just coyote hunting has evolved, and I really believe that throughout the Midwest and parts of the Northwest, that the coyote has become a difficult species because we've killed all the characteristics out of the coyotes that respond to calls. So now you've got to be hunting them at night using, vocalizations that before it was like turn on the rabbit and get ready because they're coming, but they're not stupid like that anymore. And we've killed the dumb ones out of the species, and the genetic has changed on coyotes, and it seems to be changing on bobcats as well.
Wow.
So bow hunting's hard, but that's why I like to go to Mexico, and I like to go to these places where everybody's afraid they're going to get killed by the cartel or whatever, because I'll be the only guy that calls coyotes there.
This episode is also brought to you by Traditions. As you probably know, 2 years ago, they came out with the Nitro Fire in collaboration with Federal Premium in Hodgdon. The fire stick, they shoot through those guns. This has really changed muzzleloading and has made it more safer, more accurate. Check them out today at traditionsfirearms.com.
Have you ever had any interesting, since you mentioned the cartel, have you ever had any interaction with that type of thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Give us your best story there.
I'm not going to use any names, but I have hunted with, and I still do hunt with, a fella in Mexico that I don't want to say he's part of the cartel, but he'll pop a beer with them. And they pulled us over a couple times on a mule deer hunt because we were on a gravel road where we shouldn't have been after dark. And man, we were coming down the road, and all of a sudden this old truck backed out on the road and stopped us. And he turned out his lights and jumped out of the truck and walked up to him. Then he came back to the truck, went in the back of the cooler and brought some beer up to him. And, and that was the cartel that we had run into, and we were hunting coyotes right in their backyard, but he was friendly to them. And that's the only experience I've had. I've had more bad experiences in South Texas with illegals than I have with the cartel, but, I've run into them, but I've run into a lot of people. I've had scarier experiences with fighting with the Eskimos than I have with the cartel so far. So
fighting with the Eskimos. The other story I think, that I know that I watched when you posted it, I was shocked. Your spear hunting right in Africa,
Yeah.
and literally cut your artery. I mean,
Yeah, that's the only animal I've ever speared that never died.
there you go. Because you're smart enough not to run and let that spear cut a bigger hole, right?
I don't know if that's it. I just got lucky. I think there's some more divine interaction going on right there, because when I pulled that spear out of my leg, it squirted up in my face and all over. So I thought I was a dead duck that day for sure.
How did that happen?
I was in the top of a tree. I don't use tree stands when I'm in Africa, just because it's a pain, But I would walk in every day to this remote area near a water hole, and I didn't want them driving me in there, because I was hunting some certain species that they would just be reluctant to come to the water if they heard trucks or anything like that. So I would walk in, I'd carry as much alfalfa as I could, put it under my tree, and then I'd climb up these certain trees that are near the water hole, and then wait for the animals to get downwind of my bait and come in. And you spear a lot of warthogs and stuff like that, but once in a while you kill a gemsbuck or whatever. Well, on this day, I got up there early and got up in the tree, and I had 2 or 3 spears with me. And the one I was hunting with, I took the sheath off, and it was laying across. And I self-film when I hunt with a spear. And at the time I was using GoPros, and one of them, it tripped it out of the tree somehow, and it fell down in the bait. Well, even a little GoPro with an African animal, they'll pick up on that.
Sure.
And, so as you know, they're spooky. So I started to climb down the tree, and I got halfway down the tree, and my foot slipped on one of the limbs. And when it did, my weight jerked the tree. I mean, it was a small tree anyway. I was actually, for the people that might be listening that don't know about Africa, in South Africa, especially, the trees they come up and then they bloom out, kind of like, but it's like almost like sitting on the floor on top of them. Those limbs can hold. That's why you see baboons and stuff sitting on top of them, because there's so many of them. It's like a platform almost. And I use them to spear hunt. So anyway, I had all my stuff up there, and when I crawled down, when I shook that tree, I didn't have that spear secured, and it fell, and I didn't even hear it coming. And it came down and it hit the top of my hat, knocked it, just nicked the end of my nose, and boom, went right through my thigh. So I'm standing halfway in this tree, about 8 feet off the ground, and my radio and my water and everything's above me, about 10 feet above me.
Oh my God.
And I got a spear that's 7 feet long sticking out of my leg. And at that moment, I was already in shock that I'd just done this to myself. I couldn't believe that I was standing there with that spear sticking through the bottom of my leg. And I reached down to the spear. I'm holding it because I didn't want the weight of it to keep pulling down. It was pulling down because it was trying to lean. So I pulled it back up. And the day before that, I had put little hooks on my spear so it wouldn't come out of the animal, so that spear would ride them to their death and the camera would capture it all. Well, now they're in my thigh.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, man, it's not going to be able to pull this baby out. I'm going to have to push it through. And so I started to push. And when I started to push, that point popped out of the bottom of my skin. And I was like, oh man, I can't do that. And then I thought, well, I'm going to jump down. And then I thought, well, if I jump down, the spear's going to cut me in half. So I just grabbed that baby and I held on to the tree with one hand and took my right hand and jerked that thing up out of my leg. And when I did that, the blood flew, and I knew I was a dead man. I instantly wanted to go up the tree, not so much because I wanted to get my radio and radio for help, because I wanted to get my water. Because if you ever, and I know tales of people shot in war and stuff, but if you are ever injured critically with blood loss, your system kicks in immediately and wants water. I wanted that water in the top of that tree more than anything in life at that moment. But when I tried to go up that tree, my leg was locked up. I could not go, and the blood was spraying out of me. So I just jumped out of the tree that I got the spear out of me finally, jumped down on the ground, tried to take my boot off and get my shoestrings out, but I was getting so lightheaded, I thought I was going to pass out to get a tourniquet on my leg. So I just tried to get my composure, and I was gripping the wound the best I could, and I couldn't get it to stop. So I stuck my middle 2 fingers down inside the wound until I felt the spurting coming out of my artery, and I pinched it closed and held it there for a couple hours. until every time I'd pull it out, it'd finally slow down and quit. And then after I started getting my composure and kept my wits about me, and I thought that I was finally coming out of shock, I turned on my GoPro and showed what had
Videotape.
happened.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I mean, we're glad you're alive, but I mean that experience had to be so scary. I can't imagine what it was like.
Yeah, it's pretty scary when you're dying.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, you're in Africa, right? I mean, there's predators that can come to that water hole as well, and they can smell blood.
That's funny you said that, because the weirdest thing about that whole event to me seemed like when I was on the whole time I'd hunt Africa, the warthogs were scared of me the most. I mean, if they get a cinch of wind, or if they seen something that looked human like, they would haul butt. But while I was on that ground, virtually dying, I must have been putting out a different odor or a different sense about myself, because the warthogs would not leave me alone.
No way.
They just kept coming in. They weren't attacking me, but they knew something was up, and they were like waiting or something. I never seen anything like it. I crawled over and grabbed that dang spear, and I was holding it. I'm not going to let a warthog bite me, but they just kept circling me, and they were well within bow range and spear range while they were doing it. And that went on for, a while, and till they left, but I'll never forget that.
Wow. Scary stuff. Scary. What's your favorite big game animal? I mean, you got elk, mule deer, whitetail. What if you had to pick one species that you could only hunt for a hoofed animal, what would it be now? Is it whitetails yet, or do you like something else better?
That last whitetail I killed this year was a reminder to me how special they are and why we love whitetail. Just because when it was over, the sheer thrill of that deer coming in and killing him, and just the epic rush that it gave me. And I haven't had that rush too often lately. It's been a while since I felt it, and I felt it that day, and so it'd be hard to replace whitetails, but I sure love hunting elk too. And, I hope they don't ever make me pick just one. Yeah. I don't know which one it's going to be.
I agree. It's nice to be able to start in August, right, and go all the way through the end of December or January. Well,
this is actually my best time of the year. I like January, February, March, and parts of April, because that's when I travel, to New Zealand or wherever. I'm going to Finland next couple weeks to hunt roe deer, and that's the opposite side of the equator. Our spring is their winter, and so that's my travel time to those places. And unfortunately, here in America, there's not a lot of opportunity to hunt the big game animals that we love to hunt with a spear, because they won't let me do it. But I have to go to Texas, or, if I want to hunt whitetails, it's got to be in Nebraska or in a high fence area,
Yep.
So that's why I really look forward to this time of the year, because I can grab my blowgun and my spear and head to those countries that allow me to hunt. And nice. Man, it's great, but I sure hate that flying. But once I get there, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. The flight's the worst part of it, right? And as you get older, it's no different than going to a 12 or 13-hour car drive. When you're young, it was a piece of cake. Now you get out and you're like, oh my God, you can barely move for a while.
Yeah, and the airlines nowadays, I tell you what, man. This last trip I went down to the Yucatan to hunt the ocellated turkey. I wanted to be there to call in a turkey, because a guy that I met, Sergio, discovered the sound that you can now call the ocellated turkey. Really? And you're not shooting out of the roost,
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be one of the first guys to ever do that with a bow. And I got down there and popped my bow case open, and by golly, they had taken all my broadheads and all my arrows out of my bag, and they broke the sights off my buddy's bows. The anti-hunters are all around us, and when you're at their mercy, they do things to you. But they had missed one flu arrow and one other arrow that was laying under my foam. So I had two arrows in my quiver. Well, I came home with two of those ocellated birds, let me tell you. But that's, this time of year is a good time of the year to travel. I like this time of the year, but you got to love November. I stay home for November every year, And usually I'm sitting in the tree filming my wife or one of my kids
Yep.
killing big whitetails, and that I look for that, and I'll probably do that till the day I die.
Honestly, I get more excited hunting with my kids, than I do myself. Like if it's a big deer,
Yeah,
when I'm the hunter, I'm going to kill it, right? You're going to kill it. When it's one of my kids, you just you don't know if they're going to do everything right. And 9 times out of 10, when they're 12, 13, and 14, yeah, we
yeah,
screwed up on a lot more than we killed for sure.
yeah, yeah.
So it
Well,
makes,
yeah, that's the case when they're growing up. But I'll tell you what, probably like your kids. Now that my kids are, adults, Sydney,
killer.
she's got ice in her veins. So I may lose you guys here shortly. Do I still have you?
Yeah, yeah, right now you do. We can wrap it
Okay.
up. I've enjoyed our
I see a
time.
low battery popping on my phone. So when we go black, you can say sayonara.
All right, no problem at all. I've enjoyed it. I mean, it's good to get to know you a little bit. Like I said, I've met you several times. I just never really talked that much to you, because normally at the shows I'm out hawking ads. I'm trying to do
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's where I kind of came through the industry. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job. I always like your billboards and stuff you got up at the shows too. You guys do a good job at that.
Yeah, it's fun. I just like being part of the industry, and I did have one question. So when you said you were younger, 20, who are your icons? Who'd you look up? Mine was M.R. James. I mean, I always loved Bowhunter magazine. I really did. I read Bowhunter, North American Whitetail, and Deer and Deer Hunting. Those are the 3 magazines I read. Still read them today. So those are my favorite. And I know I mentioned a couple competitors, but they're good. And M.R. James just always had that writing ability. Him and Dwight Shue, and I'm an archer too.
Yeah.
So who are your?
Well, that's funny you said that because Dwight Shue was probably the one guy that I really was drawn to because I was a writer and I liked reading his stuff. But I can tell you, I hunted Coos whitetail with Dwight, and that was a dream come true. And that was right when I got started. I went to San Francisco River Outfitters with Tom Klumpker, he's an icon in the hunting industry for big game hunting in New Mexico. But Tom's I think he's 250 years old now, but he's still around. And he invited me along, and Dwight and I went Coos deer hunting in New Mexico, and we ended up in a blizzard. But on the 5th day of that hunt, staying in a wall tent with Dwight, I came back with my first Coos deer, a little 10-pointer. He was, I think, 65 inches or something. He was a Pope and young,
Yeah.
And that was a great time in my life, and I was sad to hear about him dying, but we're all going to die eventually. And I think he had everything in order, and I'll probably see him again one day. But, that was a fun 10 days of my life to actually sit in camp and talk to a man that I looked up to.
I bet. And it's kind of interesting when you do see some people, and I'm not going to mention names. One of the guys before I was in the industry that I kind of looked up to when I actually met him, but I didn't look up to him anymore. He was not what he seemed to on the other side. Dwight wasn't it. I mean, he was salt of the earth. I can remember the first time I met him was at one of the trade shows. We had a brief 1.5-minute conversation, and the next year he literally stopped me in the hall, remembered my name, remembered everything about me, and I was like, man, this guy is amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to what you're saying there too, because there was another person that I looked up to and stuff until I got to know him, and then that changes everything. There's a lot more to being an idol to someone, if they kill things, but once you find out there's somebody that just kills things and they're not the person you want to be like, that changes everything quickly.
Correct. And you look at the people that are really popular today, yourself, Waddell, Drury, what you see is what you get, right? I mean, like, you're not any different on camera than you are every day hunting with a friend or going out with friends. I mean, it's the same person. And I think that's why people gravitate towards us. That's why people like you, is because what you see is what you get. It's the same person you see on TV is the same person I am every single day.
Yeah, our industry is probably one of the only few that's like that, though.
Yeah.
Because like Hollywood and stuff is not like that. But in our industry, you don't make it if you're putting up a front. You make it for a while.
Correct.
And same with ladies. I mean, they make it for a while if they're, putting on, but in the end, you got to be real and you got to be true to yourself, or it really won't matter in the end.
And doing it the right way, right? You mentioned Noel Feather. Look what happened to him. He found out he was shooting stuff out of the game farm. He wasn't as good a whitetail hunter as he was, and boom, you know what I mean? His popularity.
Yeah, he was. You know what? He shouldn't have done some of that stuff, and but boy, he sure was a nice guy. I mean, he was the nicest guy to me, and I hate that happened to him. And I think that we've all did things that if we'd have got caught doing them when we were young, if I'd have got caught with my 30-06 looking for my wounded deer, or if I'm not pure by no means when I was young growing up and going through that, and we all make mistakes, and I hated that he made those mistakes, and who knows how many he made, but one-on-one, he sure was a genuine nice guy, and really nice to the kids and nice to me, and I don't know if he's still alive, but
I don't either. I really don't.
I wish him the best if he is.
It's interesting too when you mention growing up as a kid and some of the things that we did. Well, we learned from our dads, right? Man,
that's right.
I goose hunted for years. I thought the sticker tag they gave just meant you could shoot as many as you want. I didn't know it was a one goose thing. You know what I mean? Like, I had no clue until I turned older, and I was like, oh, we're really supposed to use this on a goose? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you learn.
Conservation at the time you and I were kids, that wasn't part of the conversation.
No.
And that's why the wild turkey and the whitetail and all these animals that we love today, were in jeopardy because it wasn't we weren't being bad people. It was just, the society that we were part of. And that's how we looked at, things. We didn't know how bad we were hurting the species when we lay in the cornfield and killed 25 mallards or wait for them to land and shoot 7 or 8 of them in one shot. All you knew was you're getting meat, and the more you killed, the better hunter you were. And that's changed now for the best. And I'm glad that
even on whitetails, conservation, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You're letting the 3 and 4 year olds go to kill them when they're 5.
Yeah.
And even if my neighbor's shooting when he's 5, I'm happy that we made him get to 5, right? I mean, you just have some success by letting them go so many times. So
we've come a long way as a society, but sometimes it gets too far the other way. I don't want anybody yelling at my kid because he shot a spike. It's we got to draw the line there. You still got to have fun.
And what we take as fun, you got to remember some of the people don't have the opportunities we do. If they want to shoot a 2-year-old, they want to shoot a 1.5 year, go for it. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I mean, just let them have their own fun. Same thing with crossbows. I mean, this guy wants to use a crossbow, go ahead. I don't care. I'm not going to knock you for it. I'm going to use my compound till I die. But you know what I mean? Like, that's me. You do you, and however it goes. Well, Tim, that's about all the time we have. Thank you for your time. It's been sincerely enlightening. I'm glad the African spear didn't go through you. If my wife watched that thing, she would never let me spear hunt in my life. She'd be like, they're much too dangerous. But I'm Brad Rooks for Deer Talk Now. This was Tim Wells. See you on next Thursday, and hopefully we'll have another great show.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.